Yo, what is good, YouTube? So today I'm doing a mix breakdown. This is my first mix breakdown of one of my songs ever. So this is a remix of a song called Caligula by Aristotle Jones featuring Mari Aoki. So basically I'm just going to walk through the mix a little bit. This is my first one of these, so we'll see how it goes. Might be a shit show. We'll see. But yeah, let me just play a little bit of the song before I get into it. And if you are unaware, this is the mix portion of I guess a three. I'm going to try breaking these up into threes. So basically I did one on production breakdown, I did one on the vocal production breakdown, and now I'm going to focus on the mix itself, just the mix, production and arrangement stuff and vocal stuff aside. So yeah, but I will talk about mixing the vocals anyway.
Coast west when I wake up. They ain't want no trouble, so I gotta turn the bass up. Got love for my day ones. Stay stunning every day till the pay comes. Got love for my day ones. Stay stunning every day till the pay comes. Got love for my day ones. Stay stunning every day till the pay comes. Got a problem, then you better fucking say something. They ain't know the lane that I came from.
So I creep down on the block, no sleep. Ain't nobody fucking with me. See the palms on my beach. Everybody fall like leaves. Ain't nobody call the police. I just wanna find peace. I don't really care how I do it. I just wanna take laps and I blacked out. Do it go. Second guessing, this is clueless. Never mess with a Judas.
You don't wanna fall foolish.
Yeah, so that will give you kind of an idea of how the song goes and how it sounds overall. And this is obviously unmastered. I did not master this. Raytown Productions, Bobby mastered it. He's great. Highly recommend. But anyway, let's talk about the vocals for a second. So I actually had the privilege of recording these vocals in my recording studio, so I had a lot of control over the sound coming in, which is great. So I'll tell you right now what it was. It was an AT4062 mic, an Audio-Technica mic, into an Avalon, into a distressor. So the Avalon, I ducked down 150 hertz by 2 decibels, 250 by 2-ish decibels, and then 350 by 2 decibels or something. The compressor, I was probably hitting it kind of hard. I was probably doing 10 dB or so gain reduction, and then probably a fast attack, probably 1.5 attack, and then 3 for the release, something like that. And then I always try to have my peaks around -16. So thing is, I'm pretty sure I also mixed this and bounced the mixed stuff. So what I had coming into it was probably pretty great sounding, to be honest. So I mean, I hate to talk about gear being the solution, but it's not. It doesn't hurt, that's for sure. So anyway, here's what the vocal sounds like by itself.
Got love for my day ones. Stay stunning every day.
And this is time stretched, by the way, just to it's faster. Wow, I just did a Pro Tools shortcut. That's funny. It's a lot faster. Not a lot faster, but this song is 100 BPM. The original is 93. So if you hear any artifacts, it's probably that, even though I don't really notice any. Yeah, just right off the bat, I set up all my buses so that I have a main bus, and then I have, my bus over here that has more stuff on it, basically. So what I have is just a tape machine adding a little bit. I wonder if it would be beneficial for me to actually just go plugin by plugin and just show you guys what the deal is. So here's the raw. Sounds pretty good, right? Do a little bit of virtual tape machine. This kind of warms it up. I felt like it could use a little more, I like adding a little bit of this analog. What I find is that this plugin has a lot of warmth to it, so that's kind of what I found there. Looks like I tried. One sec, let me just loop the part that I can, just so I can go over it. Looks like I tried to use a Teletronics this thing, but looks like I chose the FG Red over that. So here I'm just compressing it even more. A well-recorded vocal, compression will only just add on to that sort of well-rounded sound. So I just not doing too much here, to be honest, just 3 decibels. I've shot out between 0 and 0.1, believe it or not, and I like 0 better for the attack. I think fast attack really tucks the vocal into the mix, and the release is nothing crazy, even though typically for rap I do a faster release. So I hit the drive a little bit, and then that kind of just adds even more kind of mid-rangey saturation to it, I've found. Then the Pultec. Here, I'm adding a little bit of 10K, a 10K boost. So this is like a nice crispy area to add, more of a boost to, around like 10K. Usually I do like 8K, but like 10K is what I did here. And then a little bit of an EQ. Oh, that's a filter. That's like an effect that I automate on and off in certain parts, where there's like a telephone vocal. Or as you can see, that's the phone preset. So I think I automate that on and off when I want my telephone vocal, as opposed to having like another track. And then I guess I just like high passed it. That's mad random. Okay. This must have been something that I automated on and off in a certain section. Because sometimes, so here's something that I do, and I don't even know if this was the case here, but I will automate EQs on and off in certain sections depending on, nothing is perfect, especially with audio. So if there's a section that I feel like, there's like something is off and I need an EQ just to fix this very, very specific section, then I will literally just automate an EQ on for that one section. And that's kind of one of the things that I do that's, it's a little weird, but it solves problems. So therefore it is good. Let me see. Then I added another EQ on here. So what is this even doing? Oh, that boost and the attenuation. Yeah, that's a nice warmth. So when you boost and attenuate at the same time, it actually adds like some sort of like harmonic color to it, despite the fact that what you're doing doesn't actually add up. You know what I mean? You'd think that boosting and cutting cancels it out, but boosting and cutting actually gives it a little bit of a nice sound. So that's a thing with these Pultec EQs. Multi-band compression for the... What am I even doing here? It's doing nothing. Great. Moving on. Cool. So here's what I like to do with... I have like... Here's my thing. I have a last line of defense EQ, which is basically just like where I get rid of some of this bitey shit. Yeah, that was bitey. That was also bitey. There's a lot of bitiness between between 1.9K and like 3.5K. There's a lot of like bitey frequencies that suck. This is all dynamic, so what I'll do is I'll have a lot of these kind of like subtractive EQ thingies towards the end be dynamic because it's only in certain parts. And when it's only in certain parts, there's no use in trying to just duck that frequency down as a whole. It makes more sense to just only have it decreasing when it passes the threshold of the acceptable amount, whatever that is that you determine. So here I have it kind of only affecting things. I mean, it's pretty much always... Yeah, so you see when it's poking up, when these frequencies are becoming like, an issue, offensive, then it kind of ducks those down to kind of just, make up for that. I noticed that in my car a lot. I was having issues with these like sort of like really bitey, kind of almost like telephonic bitey frequencies. So yeah, watch out for that. And then for the hook vocals, nothing crazy. I mean, oh yeah, so for the backups, just real quick. The backups, I pretty much did the same thing, except for I think I probably have a backup bus here. So let's see what the difference is. Actually, this should be interesting. My backup bus is probably, yeah. So I guess I high pass the backups even more. That's the thing. Let me just stay stunning every day till the pay comes. Got love for my day ones. Stay stunning. Yeah, so let me just go to a part that has the backups actually in it. Y'all just ain't getting it. All the pain dead and shit. Music is my medicine. Take a couple. Yeah, so that stuff is like, typically you DS your backups more and you want to just cut out some of the lows so that the kind of like, not the lows, but like, the mid-range so that it's kind of more in the center. You know what I mean? And then it looks like I just did kind of what I did here. I added less top end because you don't need as much top end, I guess, in the backups as you would in the... I mean, at least not for this song. So that's kind of how I process my backups a little bit differently. And I'm setting all this stuff to like reverb and delay. Let me just go back to this section that I know and love. So basically, like, I solo the vocals. All this stuff is going through like a casual delay, which is basically just like, H delay with like an eighth note And then what I do, this is my thing that I do, that probably mad other people also do, but like I sidechain the vocal to the delay so that, and I do kind of like a fast attack and like a release of like usually like 1,000 milliseconds is what I found is a nice kind of like middle ground for that. Yeah, I leave auto gain on sometimes because I literally think it's easier for me to just know that the volume is gonna even out towards the end, I guess. Not always though. Auto gain, because auto gain will sneak up on you and make things sound like they don't make sense. But that's typically what I do is I just side chain the vocal to this specific band, and that way the delay kind of stays out of the way while the vocal's there, and then it comes up when the vocal is not there, which is great. And I did the same exact thing. I also de-S my delays sometimes because the S's are kind of annoying, but as you can see, I also filter the delays using H delays, kind of like filter. Yeah, I filter out everything below 50 hertz and then filter out like 2.5K is usually what I do. Feedback kind of low. Ping pong always. I don't think I've ever not used ping pong. That's just how I have found works for me, is that ping pong keeps the delays out of the way of the vocal. So that's what I found works. Same with like the fast delay. I have like multiple delays because I'm going for like a really trippy sound in certain sections. So this one's compressing a little bit more just because the fast delay, it's like a 16th note. So it's gonna be really annoying if it's so loud because it's like, you know, it sounds like way too trippy. So yeah, that's what I did there. And then for my vocal reverb, I just have, what is it? Wait, yeah, so this is what I used here. This reverb, just a hall reverb, honestly, is great. Kind of like, yeah, the reverb time. Reverb time for me, I like kind of 1.8, maybe like 2.0. That's kind of what I found as a sweet spot, because you don't want it to be too long or else it kind of just like bleeds into like, you know, too many other things, just like time-wise. So that's typically what I do. And then another thing that I do is I cut the highs clearly, and then I have a plugin called Track Spacer here that basically I sidechain the vocal to Track Spacer, and it's not the mid channel. Normally I kind of try to affect just the mid channel because it kind of lets you do that if you wanted to. Here, I think I mixed this before I even knew that trick. So, yeah, my big thing, right, is making the reverbs not like annoying in the mix. So, big way that I combat that is with like, you know, making sure that cutting out the highs and the lows, you know, where appropriate, and then also sometimes I'll use like a dynamic EQ for this, and I'll sidechain the vocal to it. But Track Spacer is a cool plugin as well for that. So, basically, yeah, all it does is it just like feeds signal from the vocal into here and makes it get out of the way. So that's great. And then my hook section, I think the hook is basically just like, yeah. So just some compression, basic compression, kind of fast attack, kind of fast release. Yeah, just some compression. Alright, so yeah, I did a lot of subtractive EQ here. Yeah, hate that. Hate that. Hate that. Yeah, there's all these like annoying, like sort of like brittle sounding frequencies and like telephonic and just, yeah. I just wanted to tame all that stuff, you know, so that's subtractive EQ stuff. And then this is a great compressor for vocals. This is the best LA2A compressor for vocals in my experience, so that's the one that I would recommend for that. Just probably another EQ. I don't even think this works right now. Yeah, that must be a different FabFilter version or something, but it was probably just more subtractive EQ. Yeah, and then yeah, one thing that I do that I really kind of wanted to stress is that I have ad-lib panning, but like I actually automate these effects kind of like up and down in certain sections. Like I have my delay completely cut out here. Like if you just, I automate my delay off here because it's like I wanted that little bit of space there. Like I automate my effects because sometimes like when you have all these effects going and you want your production to have like the right sort of like, you know, dynamics as far as like, you know, contrast, you can't have like a delay, you know, doing whatever in the background when you're trying to like hone in on the production a little bit. When you're trying to highlight the production and you have like a leftover delay or like a leftover reverb, it sounds so much cleaner if you just like cut that out and make it like, you know, it helps that pickup note come in a little bit more cleanly. So like that's one thing that I really think is crucial that people don't talk enough about is like automating your effects and making them, you know, clean in the mix. Like if we go to my effects down here, like, wait, that's not them. Like, you know, I'm doing that like all over the place. Like what even is that? Oh, that's the outro. Yeah, well, yeah, like automating effects is one way to just like make your mix really just have the right type of movement to it and not like I just threw on reverb and you know walked away from it. It's like, nah, you gotta like tend to it a little bit and make sure that you're cutting it out at that section where you're trying to bring everything back except for the like, you know, the piano or the one vocal, or you know what I mean. So tangent over. So yeah, that's it for vocals. Let's talk about the production a little bit. So let's talk about the production as it pertains to the section that I've been reviewing for the sake of consistency. So I've talked about, so if you don't know, I have a video already about the production itself, like my sample selection kind of and all that stuff. But this is, I'm just trying to talk about like strictly mixing right now. So my kick drum, I have Neutron doing a bunch of stuff. Basically, like, you know, if you boost 60 hertz, you'll get a lot more like low end like punch out of it. So that's kind of what I did there. It looks like I also boosted 100 hertz and I boosted a little bit of this kind of like mid-ranginess, cut some of the highs, additive EQ, and then took the sustain down a little bit with a transient. I always transient shape my kicks, like just because I feel like it adds a lot to like the punch and like it's less like woofy when you have like less sustain to it. So let me see if I can just like solo the kick just for the sake of this example. Yeah. Just comes out a little bit punchier. Then a compressor, just doing a little bit of compression. Yeah, I honestly mixed this so long ago I don't even really remember what my thought process was behind using that many modules in Neutron, but I could tell you probably the rest of it more easily. So here, the slow attack on drums and kicks and things like that is crucial, I will say. That really helps the transient punch through with compression, so that's super helpful for that. And then I just got a little more of this, apparently. Yeah, I guess I just added more punch to it. Interesting. Or just added a little more, yeah. So you wouldn't think that sounds good, which is kind of why I'm wondering if I knew what I was doing. No, I'm joking. I think it probably helped because 100 hertz is very common to boost for like if you're trying to get more like oomph out of the kick. And then yeah, this compressor with it's like technically it's not parallel compression because I have the mix knob down or whatever, but basically just kind of like adding more compression to it, more smack to it. Normally I would have this attack time a little bit slower probably because it would punch through a little bit. It's funny. This is me like critiquing my own mix from a few months ago. But yeah, and then what did I do here? I added more 60 hertz using this. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is a little redundant, but like 60 hertz, 100 hertz, great places to boost if you're trying to add more like low end punch to your kick. Yeah. So my 808. So what I did here is I used Ozone Imager. This like low key was like immediately after I watched a Davon Terrell video on how to do all of these things. So some of this stuff is probably like taken straight out of that video. So I'll be sure to have to shout him out at some point. But yeah. So I got the kind of the bass in mono, which you know I have the low end kind of like centered with an imager, which kind of helps it out more so. Then bass rider. So here's the biggest thing. Like I actually did spend a lot of time, you know, finessing the bass rider on this one because my issue, and you may not hear this very easily, you definitely use like speakers or headphones, but like my issue was that low note. So that low note there was so low in the mix and you couldn't really hear it in a lot of systems. So what I did is that I had a bass rider that basically just like rides this and really just like affects the volume based on certain notes because not every note is the same. God damn it. Not every note is the same as far as like yeah, not every note is the same as far as volume. So a lot of times I'll have to go in and use something like Bass Rider to kind of like make the volumes a little bit more consistent, so that's pretty helpful for doing that. And all this stuff requires a little bit of tweaking. You basically just want to have this target around the note that your loudest note hits, in my experience, or maybe the second to loudest one, and then just kind of like make sure it doesn't go above a certain point, and then make sure it doesn't go below a certain point. So that's what I did there. And then this just brings the tail out even more. If you kind of have like a release time, that really just brings the tail up. You'll see that it compresses some of these higher notes. Yeah, low key, it's probably undoing a little bit of this bass rider, because you can see it working mainly when that low hit gets boosted. So yeah, then I added a Pultec to attenuate 60 hertz, because my kick is being the boost is real on the kick with the 60 hertz, as you know. So like attenuating that was crucial with the 808. Then I have R bass, kind of doing more with the 120 hertz. There's several different sort of like areas to the low end. 120 is sort of that like low mids / like high low end. So I wanted to bring out more of that. Wanted to bring out some of that 90, some of the like boominess in the bass. Then I also wanted to bring out some of the like sub. So brought out the low end, all the different areas of the low end, and as a result, what you end up with is just a very well-rounded bass. And let me see if I have like an EQ somewhere that I could just show you like how well-rounded. Yeah, you see it has all the kind of like relevant areas within bass. Yeah, so that's nice. And then yeah, sidechain the 808 to it, or sidechain the kick to it, because I've found that it's better. Sounds better when you sidechain the kick. Some people say like, oh, don't do that, it doesn't punch as hard. I personally like it. I like my mixes to be like very clean, very controlled. So what I did is I sidechained the kick to the 808, and the kick is fully responsible for the punch, and the 808 is fully responsible for that low end, that sub, and they can live together happily ever after. And I also, looks like I sidechained soothe. I sidechained the kick to soothe as well, to kind of do the exact same thing, but I just felt like I needed more, so that's what I did there. Yeah, and then I did this little trick. Shout out Davon. Basically, added distortion to it. Added distortion to this bass, and then cut out the lows, cut out some annoying like resonances, and then reverse the phase on one side. And behold, you have, a kind of like top endy, nice distorted. I'll turn it up so that you can hear it. Yeah, it obviously sounds a little crazy there, but you get the idea. So that kind of adds a little bit more of like top end spread to it. So that's kind of what I went for there. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the bass stuff. For the snare, yeah. A lot of this is sample selection, but it looks like I just boosted 240 for some body, 12.5K for some sparkle, compressed it with a slow release time, keep the attack intact, and yeah, and then took back out some of that stuff. A lot of my mixing is a lot of like kind of back and forth, because I'm like, I want to use the API, but 2 decibels is too much, so I'm going to go in with a fab filter after and just like finesse it to exactly where I want it, So yeah, and then it looks like I used soothe as well, just to kind of like tame some of that, because that is a very, very harsh snare. So it's important to be mindful of that. But yeah, so that's what I did with the snare. Yeah, so with these claps, I wanted them to be kind of spread out. So looks like I used this compressor to kind of add some more punch to it. But also tame it a little bit. Yeah, slow attack with these percussive elements is key. A little bit of a transient shaper to bring out the sustain. Cool. So with these claps, if you really want to see like how I actually like broke these claps down from a production standpoint, as far as like sample selection, then I have like a whole other video on just the production of this song. But let me just show you like how I kind of mix them. So if I go to chorus claps, yeah. So basically all I have is, an EQ to kind of take care of the harshness a little bit. Then I have just a compressor with a kind of medium attack time, just because like it's important not to like kill the transients entirely with the compressor. So you know, and you can add a little bit of punch to this, which is nice. So that's what I did here. And then a little bit of a transient shaper to bring some of that sustain down and make it a little more, you know, less, more in the pocket from that sort of like shaping standpoint. And then here's what I use an imager in this case, but like, you know, since then I've further developed my philosophy of like fixing things as early in the process as possible. So by that I mean like using an actual like different, you know, using different clap samples and then panning them hard left and hard right and having that be what creates the stereo spread versus like relying on plugins that are going to mess up the phase. So, but alas, here I am using what even is that? Shuffler? Yeah, it's just like an imager plugin, I'm pretty sure. And then, you know, soothe using a preset just to tame the harshness a little bit. And then usually I use a plate reverb for things like snares and claps, but here I used a little bit of a hall just because it was a little more like saturated of a sound, and I liked it a little bit more. As far as the release time, there's a formula to kind of try to figure out like what exactly the amount time it should be before the next hit, but I usually just use my ears and kind of want the decay to end maybe on the start of the next downbeat or the start of the next clap, so I kind of just use my ears to figure that out. And then yeah, so that's that clap sound. And then so for the hi-hats, let me just go back to the other section here. So for the hi-hats, where can I? So if I go to the hi-hat bus, basically like this hi-hat, I was super proud of it because of the fact that it's basically like a drum beat inside of. I break this down in the production video as well if you'd rather just you know, look at that to how I kind of like structured that out. But like, you know, the only thing I really did here, there's an EQ, but like it's not doing much. Mainly it's the compression, because when you have a bunch of different hi-hats and you're not leveling them out as far as volume, then they're going to be inconsistent in volume. So adding a compressor on top of like a hi-hat bus, for example, kind of really just, you know, brings them all to the front, makes them all sound good. So as far as like a reverse cymbal goes, I do something on my reverse cymbal that works every time, so I don't change it. It's basically just like you know, a compressor doing this, kind of like, you know, moving with it. It's just like, you know, compressing it as it's going with like with an attack time that makes sense for the sound. Kind of just goes with it. That just brings that whole reverse cymbal out. And then using something like Soothe or like an EQ to kind of like take care of some of that top end is definitely crucial. So that's kind of what I do here. And then after that, I have like my crash, and my cymbal bus is doing a lot of the same. Yeah, so I did a little bit of distortion to the top end, basically some tape distortion or saturation, whatever you want to call it, just to the top end, and it actually made a huge difference. It really made them pop like a lot. So check out without it. Like, it just makes them so much crispier. So, and again, like that can be a problem. I did use Soothe again because that probably brought some of it out, as well as like this. So here's the thing, right? Like, if your hi-hats are too crispy, then you're gonna run into problems later for sure. Like, I guarantee it when it comes to mastering, and either you who's mastering it or your mix engineer who's mastering it tries to bring out the top end, and all of a sudden like the hi-hats are really just like aggressively in your ear, and your ears are just like stop, then it's a problem. So it's important to kind of have that stuff in check, and the best way to do that is to make sure that, you know, you're taking care of frequencies like these that are just like really just brittle frequencies that can really become a problem later if you're trying to boost the top end. And also just make sure the hi-hats are not too loud, because one of my biggest issues was like my hi-hats were too loud. So when my mastering engineer brought up the top end, I'd be like, ew, I need to send you a new mix. And I'd be like, wow, I'm that guy now. I'm the guy who sends the mastering engineer a new mix. And the shame. So like I recommend not making your hi-hats too loud. So yeah, the only other sound as far as like a maybe like chord drum standpoint is these like clicks and clacks. Like, I don't even know what you'd call them, but they're basically just like a bunch of sounds that all I did here was that I don't really even know what these sounds would be considered, but like I added a transient designer, like a transient shaper, to be able to kind of like differentiate between like all the different like transient designers are great for like making each kind of like note or hit stand out and be distinctive, or it'll sound kind of like, let me hear without it. Kind of just makes them a little bit attackier, a little bit punchier, and they cut through in the mix a little bit more.
Take a couple set it is, y'all just ain't getting it. All the pain dead is shit. Music is my medicine.
Yeah, it's a little subtle. It's probably kind of hard to hear, but they cut through the mix a little bit more with with it versus without it.
Set it is, y'all just ain't getting it. All the pain dead is shit. Music is my medicine. Take a couple set it is, y'all just ain't getting it. All the pain dead is shit. Music is my medicine.
Sounds like they have more top end too, which is interesting. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. And then what else? Got my snaps. Big on the crazy reverbs with a lot of this stuff. Like I picked a very specific like altiverb reverb for that sort of like woodblock sound. And then hold on. So for this stuff, yeah, for the woodblock I had that reverb, and then let me just open up my samplers. Yeah, so for that trap woodblock, let me see. Yeah, so for this trap bus, I basically just have like Neutron doing some transient shaping. Again, more transient shaping, just kind of like making these notes sound distinctive from each other. Then a little bit of, I guess that's a slow attack? Yeah, it's like a slow attack kind of. Yeah, so that basically, or was it fast? I really don't know. I probably mixed this so long ago. I probably mixed this before I even knew that these were the opposite of what they were supposed to. Oh, that sounds right, yeah. So the slow attack is crucial with, what is actually, a percussive element. Like, it's great to have, like, a slow attack for something to poke through if you still want to compress it, So, but yeah, with some of these other sounds, like the submarine, or that's not it, actually. Like, yeah, like with that, for example, like the best way to get a really good that sound with the right reverb is to just have like a really wet hull. Specifically, like this Lexicon hull is just like great for that. So that's kind of what I did, and then oh, that's crazy. I sidechained that to the reverb that's on that like submarine, that single submarine hit, so that it wouldn't conflict really with it frequency wise. That's so me. I would do that. And then this one has its own little reverb. Yeah, I wanted that thing to have its own reverb length, so that those reverbs didn't get in each other's ways, which is kind of contrary to like how people mix normally, which is like, yeah, that's not how you normally mix. You normally like want to have one reverb for like many elements and have them each have their own, as opposed to having them each have their own thing. But in some cases, just from a decay standpoint, it makes more sense for the arrangement for it to have its own, especially when it's like that crazy, of a decay and it's that wet. But yeah, that's all that stuff. And then there's a bunch of stuff I'm probably not gonna go into too much because it only happens like a few times in the song. Like this, for example. Hold on, wait, this part. Because that's all like sound design stuff, you know what I mean? And it only happens like once in the song, so it's literally, I think it's like a preset from Splice. But yeah, all I think I did there was just cut the lows, because some of these presets, man, you literally don't have to do much. Like, you just like let it do its thing. It's already mixed very well, so that's what I love about presets. Shout out presets and modifying them and not giving a fuck. Okay, so after that, yeah, the woodblock, the reverb, kind of keeping things clean is crucial for that. And then, so I'm going to come to one of the most crucial sounds in the entire arrangement is this. The like crazy kind of synth sound. So a big thing is the arrangement itself and the sounds. And I actually go into this in my other video on like the sound itself. But if you go into this bus, so my main thing with this was that I really didn't want this to get in the way of the vocals. So there's a few ways that I kind of made it a little bit spread out. Mainly, a lot of it has to do with like the synth that I actually like had be multiple like waveforms or whatever, or multiple like, you know, saw waves, and just had them be slightly off center. And then so some of the top end was crazy, so I did multi-bands on the top end. Used this Teletronics like an LA2A just to even it out volume-wise. Some basic shaping, nothing crazy. And then here's where I think the main sauce is. Like, I brought the stereo out in kind of like the top end stuff, and then that kind of gave it a little bit of spread, you know, out of the way. And then I also did some stuff here. I took out a lot of like the mid-range from like the center to leave space for other elements in the vocal. I brought out the top end in the vocal, and then no, what am I even saying? I brought out the top end in like the sides, so that was helpful with that. Even though it sounds like it's kind of just in the center there, but yeah. And then I had some kind of like dynamic stuff happening there with the low ends, and then OTT just kind of like evens it out, brings out the top end a little bit more. The delay is really cool here. I have like a ping pong delay for this. No idea where it is, to be honest. Oh, here it is. Yeah, it's just like this. Like, this is my favorite thing. This right here, this like eighth note like duplet ping pong delay. It's a really interesting sound. You should try it on like certain, especially like percussive synthy elements. So that was good for that. Then a little bit of reverb here, just I guess like a chamber reverb, just to give it more life in the mix. And then yeah, so it's a combination of like synth selection, layering, blending it properly. You can kind of see the levels here, and then just some basic, you know, mixing, some mid-side stuff as well as some like stereo imaging stuff to kind of keep it out of the way of the vocal. But best way to put the vocal on top is to mix the vocal louder than that synth. So originally my vocals weren't loud enough, and I had to bring my vocals up to make the vocals kind of on top of the mix, you know. So that's what I did there. Then I have like, let me see. I had another sound as well. I had kind of this sort of sounds that I'm gonna go into it in other songs because I use it in other songs as well. But I have that, so that's pretty cool when you add like delay to that. So that's pretty. I have like a specific delay dedicated just to that thing, because I don't even know where it is. It's probably hidden somewhere, but like those percussive elements, like if you delay them, they sound pretty amazing. And then I guess I took a lot of the mid-rangey sort of like information out just because I really wanted that to be out of the way of the vocal. When you the more stuff you have in your arrangement, the more you have to be mindful of, you know, taking things like that out, you know. But yeah, so yeah, especially with the stereo image, it's crucial to kind of like be mindful of all these things so that they all kind of like fit together in the puzzle properly. So yeah. And then as far as like, you know, the chorus elements, there's a lot of stuff here that's really just contact instruments that already sound good, kind of on the way in, like the strings bus. What is even happening here? Yeah, I guess I use like virtual mix rack just to kind of like compress it, add a little bit of saturation, add a little bit of compression, add some saturation with this Hollywood thing, and then I guess I just boosted the highs a little bit. I was probably just learning how to use the mix track when I did that, so I kind of like used this MV2. It's like upwards compression, so it brings out a lot of this kind of like, you know, because some of the hits are obviously like, I don't really know how you play like a string instrument. I'm just embarrassing myself at this point, but like, you know, some of those lower notes, you can kind of bring those up with things like upwards compression, so that's kind of what I was aiming to do here. And then, yeah, some basic compression here. And then everything else is basically just straightforward. I've covered pretty much everything at this point. I didn't even touch some of these other synths because a lot of these other synths, you know, were just sounded amazing just coming out of Serum, luckily. And then one thing that I will say is that I send the vocal to my synths bus. Or did I? Yeah. Yeah, so I use track spacer, and I don't send it to the whole instrument, like including the drums, because the drums are never the issue when they're fighting the vocal. It's always like, the synths. So I have like either like a track spacer or a dynamic EQ. I will sidechain that. I'll sidechain the vocal to that, and then basically like it just keeps that stuff out of the way just a little bit from the vocal. That way the vocal can really just not have to fight with anyone. So that's what I do here. And that's pretty much the whole mix. This mix is huge. Like I might have missed some stuff, but that's as much as anyone probably will watch. So yeah, this. I hope you got something out of this, and I hope that this was helpful and insightful. And I would appreciate like, subscribe, all that good shit, and also like check out the song because I'm really trying to build my artist brand, and this is a big way for me to kind of like give value as well as like promote my music because I care deeply about my music. So I love to promote it, but I also love to help artists and producers to like learn how to mix and do their thing, kind of similarly to how I do my thing. So I'm also willing to take suggestions, comments, things that you'd like to see more of, things that worked, didn't work, feedback. This is so new for me, so I welcome all of it, and appreciate you, and I love you. Peace.